So this right here uh, is a Freemason ring. I got it when I was 18. That's when I was fully passed as a Master Mason. This is actually based off of my grandfather's ring. But this one, instead of getting his set, I got my own set. So there was like a whole ceremony for it and everything, and I didn't have to necessarily pay for this. This was just given to me. This was like a gift, and it definitely means a lot. Kept it for like a lot of years. Um, Even though I'm not necessarily like in good standing anymore, I still have to pay my dues.
And why aren't you in a good standing?
It just kind of costs money because it's a fraternity, so you often have to, pay yearly dues. It's not too much, but
And you said it was in the same set as your grandfather's?
Yeah, actually. So my grandfather's has diamonds on it, and I actually had that one too. I don't have it with me here, but
why don't you have it?
I thought it was too special. I think just to risk taking it
Too
over.
special?
Yeah, it was too special. This one, even though it really means a lot to me, I felt that like if anything happened to it, that's on me. It's my ring. But my grandfather's, that's been his since back in the 50s. So I didn't want to risk anything like that.
And how would you feel if something happened to this one?
Oh, devastated. Absolutely devastated. This definitely signifies like a huge point in my life. It was an accomplishment. I had to, work for it. It wasn't just necessarily you can just buy this online or go somewhere and get it. You have to put in the work for it. And for all intents and purposes, aside from even being fitted to my finger, this is mine. This signifies me. So without it, like that's a piece of me.
So what exactly about it signifies you? The ring itself, or is it symbolic of something deeper?
I think it's a little both. I think it's a little both. I think that the symbolism is very apparent because this had to be earned. This is a part of my life that I wanted to do. This signified an event that I put a lot of time into and stuff I still believe in, even if I don't necessarily pay to be in the group anymore. I'm still, I have a lot of history in it. So it definitely means a lot as far as memorabilia, but the physical item itself, as I said before, you can't buy these. You have to earn them. So it's a physical totem of accomplishment.
I'm assuming they come in different styles and
actually
gemstones.
Actually, the only two styles there are this red stone and then a blue stone. It's typically actually blue stone is much more common.
Okay.
The group is actually known as Blue Lodge when you earn this stone. I got a red stone because of my grandfather. Because my grandfather had been higher in the ranking and he had been in a different thing. And so since they traced my lineage to that, I was allowed to get the red stone, even though I'm not as high as he was.
Were you inspired to join the Freemasons because of your grandfather, or were you just curious in general?
I was just curious in general, actually. I learned that my grandfather was a part of it after the fact, after I was already halfway through it. It's my great-grandfather. It's my father's mother's father. And when she found out I was doing this, she told me, oh, hey, he had done that, given me some of his old memorabilia because he had already passed. And that part did inspire me to get the red stone. But I had already been a year into it.
Okay. So is the ring more meaningful to you because of how you earned it, or because of your relationship to your grandfather?
I think of how I earned it a little more. I did know my great-grandfather throughout growing up, but our relationship was a little odd. He had Alzheimer's by the time that I was around. So it was interesting because he would always treat me very nicely, even though he had Alzheimer's. And that was very significant because he was kind of mean to everyone else at that point. And so there's definitely a relationship there. But for me personally, because I went into this not knowing he was into it, this does signify a little bit more of myself to me than necessarily.
Did you get the ring after he had Alzheimer's or previous?
Oh, after. He had long been passed. He had already been dead for about 7 years or so.
Okay.
I think he passed when I was about 10 or 9, and you have to be 18.
Okay. So let me review my notes real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So in relation to the other ring that you said was too special, so if you were to choose one ring to wear for the rest of your life, which one would you choose? Would you choose the other one knowing that it's too special? and you don't want to lose it, or do you wear this one because this one's similar to your grandfather's and it also signifies your completion of the Freemasonry? Was it like a course or
It's
program?
initiative. They call them, the terminology is degrees.
Degrees.
And it's more akin to a combination of classes along with civic service. It's a lot that goes into it. Kind of like how, like, when you graduate high school, not only do you have to have grades, you have to, some people do volunteer hours and stuff like that. And there's 3 of them. And
Okay.
so I completed all 3 within about a year. And that was,
And then you get the ring.
and then I got the ring after I completed all of them. So I guess to answer the question, I think that if I could only wear one, it would be the more special grandfather's ring. Just because even though it doesn't necessarily signify the same thing as this one, I can still see the relative memento in it because it still signifies the accomplishment as well as being actually my grandfather's ring.
Okay. And how often do you wear the ring?
Not too often at all. When I do, it's either when I go to lodge, the Masonic area, or very special occasions. Normally, this is not necessarily like a costume piece of jewelry. This is more set in its box, somewhere where I know it is.
Okay, and sometimes these type of secret societies or organizations, they kind of off-putting to some people who don't fully understand what they are. So do you ever feel weird or uncomfortable wearing this ring in public, knowing that many people don't understand the significance of Freemasonry?
Surprisingly, no. A lot of times, especially people in our age group, whether it be like media or stuff like that, people are really engaged by, I guess, the secrecy of it. We don't necessarily call it a secret society. We call it initiative society because there's no secrets. You're welcome to join.
Right.
But they're not just going to tell everything to everyone. You have to show that you're willing to put it in. It's more akin to kind of like, if you sit in a class and don't understand what's going on in the class, well, it's because you didn't take the coursework required for it. You know, they don't want to teach someone who's not willing to learn. And so usually I kind of start with that. I usually engage people saying it's not secret, it's not exclusionary. You just have to be one, ask one, you know? And so once people realize that there's really no barriers involved, that it's just a matter of initiative, people actually start opening up to it, asking me what's it about, and et cetera. And a lot of it is actually just civic work. It's a lot of helping people, being involved in the community. A lot of that, kind of similar to almost like what a church group outside of church would do.
Okay.
It's mostly like that. Yeah, nothing too crazy.
If one point in the future you do decide to have kids, do you think you would pass it down to your kids or your grandchildren, or maybe another significant other? Or
I definitely feel I would pass it down to a child, but I am a little hesitant about it because definitely what signifies this ring from my grandfather's ring is a matter of this one is inherently mine. There is nothing about it that, if I didn't join the Masons, there could have been a chance that I got my grandfather's ring, but no chance I could have gotten this ring.
Okay.
So even though I would hand it down necessarily as a memento to me, I wouldn't hand it down to a child as for him to keep.
Okay. And you said earlier if you lost it, you'd be devastated.
Yes.
Would it be easy to replace? And if you did get a replacement, would it hold the same significance to you?
I guess it would be somewhat relatively easy to replace for me, but only me. And the memento though would be lost simply because this is the original one, and this definitely signifies, you know, years in the past. I'm 24 now. I got this when I was 18.
So there's something special about getting the first ring. So any other ring after this wouldn't hold the same.
It just wouldn't hold this. Yeah, your first one is definitely the most important one because it signifies right then and there, because it's not necessarily something you get after the fact. You get it right when you complete it. So it's part of the whole ceremony, and that really kind of ties in the whole experience to one object.
Okay. And is the ring involved in any ceremonies, or is it just for a symbolic? Is it just symbolic of your membership?
It's purely symbolic. It's not necessarily used for anything other than being a ring. But a lot of what Freemasonry is about is a ritual, and part of that ritual is playing the part, I guess, and having all the right pieces. You know, just like if you were an actor on stage, you'd have to have a costume. That's just as important as your lines. And so this ring is inherently kind of a part of it. While you wouldn't be turned away if you didn't necessarily have one, it's somewhat important to have. It's just a matter of respect.
Okay. Just let me review my notes real quick.
Absolutely.
So, in relation to your grandfather, does the ring bring up any specific memories with your grandfather?
Two memories, in fact. One when I was about 6. As I said before, he had Alzheimer's, and one of the reasons he actually didn't really know the relationship between me and him at that point. He didn't understand how I was.
How old were you at this time?
I was about 5 or 6.
And how old was he?
He was in his 80s.
80s.
And he actually didn't really fully understand that his grandson's son was me. He just thought I am.
So pretty much your entire youth up until
his death.
He
really didn't understand who I was.
Okay.
But he understood that I was someone who came around a lot, and we had a relationship of some sort, even though he didn't fully understand it. And one time he was being somewhat mean to my grandmother, his daughter.
Yeah.
He was being mean to my great grandmother, his wife. But he would allow me to sit next to him, and he would just kind of talk to me. And one time he was playing with my hair as a 5-year-old, and he was just commenting, because he was bald at the time, like, you have such a great head of hair. And it was funny because he had just been, for the past 30 minutes, kind of just railing against everyone kind of angrily. And he sat down, calmed down with me, watched whatever I was watching, and kind of played with my hair and commented on that. And I always thought that was funny. Of course, at the time, I didn't remember. But that's the first memory. And the second memory happened when I was older, when his wife, my great-grandmother, passed. They were laid together in a cemetery. And in their mausoleum, because he was a Freemason, he has the Freemason symbol.
Okay.
On his tombstone.
And was he buried with his rings, or what happened to them?
No, the one ring was, all his mementos were given to me. That's typically, even though he was given a Masonic funeral, the items kind of ceased to be a thing.
This is your grandfather on your father's side or your mother's side?
This is my grandfather on my father's side. My father's mother.
And your father is not a Freemason?
No, he is not. He was somewhat interested, because I knew that he knew that his grandfather was involved. And that was something he actually didn't really tell me when I was initially involved, which was interesting. He would not mention that, especially because my grandfather, my father's father, had died very young. So
okay.
My dad's father figure really was his mother's father, his grandfather. But when we were there in the mausoleum noticing those symbols, it was an odd sort of connection between me and my grandfather, who's been passed, who I didn't really have too many memories with. That in a weird way, because of the fraternity, me and my great-grandfather are brothers, in a spiritual sense. Okay. He is my brother. He's blood of my blood in a literal sense. And walking through that mausoleum, I actually noticed there were a lot more tombstones with Masonic symbols on them. And it was such a weird sense of, wow, I have a whole family that's buried here. These men that I've never known.
So do you get like the type of spiritual connection when you wear a Masonic symbol? Do you kind of feel like you're connecting to your grandfather?
Yeah, I do.
In a more meaningful way.
I do a little bit, because it symbolizes something that exists beyond us. Excuse me. And it's not just with my grandfather, especially after that moment in the mausoleum. It's a strange connection I can have with anyone that is part of the fraternity, that no matter what, even if I've never met this person, he and I are brothers.
Okay.
And especially for an organization that's so old, this goes so much deeper than any college fraternity or social club, because this is extremely deep. It's not just, oh, well, if you're cool enough, you can get in. It's a lot of work to get up to that point and be accepted. So
basically the ring symbolizes hundreds of years of a particular brotherhood.
Oh, absolutely. That's definitely its core meaning. Aside from what it means to me personally, what it means to anyone who's initiated and raised, this symbol signifies that, above all else, that we are family.
Do you as well feel that way about the ring?
I mean, of course, every man's different, you know. I mean, there's good Masons and there's bad Masons. But if you're truly kind of in it, and you really believe in it, then yes, that's what it would signify. And at the very least, even if you don't necessarily believe in that, you can still recognize, hey, we share an experience that a majority of people do not have.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on these experiences?
I mean, not entirely. What I can say is, as I said before, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's not just necessarily showing up. It's memorization. It's reading a lot of books. It's really knowing who you are.
So it's also a symbol of your dedication to the
absolutely
knowledge of whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a dedication to the ritual, to the society, and ritual and society and the society are intertwined. You know, that's our history is majority oral. It's majority performed. And even though that we have books and things to learn from, a lot of knowledge is simply passed like this. No writing down. It's simply a conversation should have an impression, and you should learn from that and remember that. And that can be extremely hard in this day and age where we write everything down. We have, most people don't remember phone numbers for their parents. So for me to have to go through a whole year of a lot of the core knowledge I just had to memorize, that definitely signifies some sort of a very interesting experience. A lot of it is just kind of a symbolism of a shared experience that a lot of people will not have, and that definitely does mean something.
Okay. So you mentioned before that your grandfather was buried in a mausoleum.
Yes.
Do you think that you'd be buried in that same mausoleum, and do you think you'd be buried with this ring and any other Masonic
items? Not in that mausoleum. I think that the mausoleum itself wasn't necessarily Masonic. Masons don't have a churchyard per se. We have a funeral procession that we do specifically for a Mason when he dies, but we don't necessarily have an area. A man is buried wherever his faith was. My great-grandfather was Lutheran, so I believe it's a Lutheran mausoleum. I wouldn't be buried with my items. He wasn't, and it's not necessarily common to be buried with that. It's more of this is important while you're alive, while you can still do things after the fact. Your time here, it holds no meaning because you are gone, and so everything that was attached to you in this regard is no longer, the physical things don't matter. You've moved on or whatever you believe, and you let go of these things. These things are now back to the organization which they came from, and a lot of people tend to keep them. Some people donate them. In my lodge back home, we have a lot of artifacts that are both historically significant and also things that people have just donated or they will to be donated, their families have donated, and it kind of represents history, a living history. But yeah, it's not too common to be buried with your actual things. You don't need them.
Okay. So when the day does come and you do pass, what do you think you will do with the ring?
I would hope to pass it down to someone.
Would you be open to donating it? And if you were, who would you donate it to?
If I was open to donating to, I would donate it to my mother lodge. It's in Arcadia, neighborhood where I grew up. In Los Angeles, California. Okay. And they were my mother lodge. That's where I was initiated, passed, and raised. That's where I became, because technically for the first 2 degrees, you're not a real Mason yet.
Excuse me.
You're a Mason of only one lodge. Once you gain the ring, you're a Mason of all lodges, but you have a mother lodge.
So the ring is it's almost a tool. It opens up the doors to more knowledge, more connections.
It just signifies that you have put in the work to. It's more of like a physical representation of all the work you put in, because even after you get fully raised and you have a mother lodge and now can go to any other lodge versus when you're just initiated and it can only go to one lodge, you do have paperwork. It's not as esoteric as people think. I do have a card that has my name, birth date, and my date of being raised. That is the official thing. If I went to a lodge saying here in Honolulu, I would have to present my legal ID. This just won't get me in. Okay. But it does signify offhand that I am someone with those credentials.
Like a sense of entitlement?
Not necessarily. It's just a sense of comfort to know that if I saw someone with this ring, my first thought would be that, yes, they have all the paperwork necessary. They are, in fact, a part of the society. We pressure them. But could I just walk up to a lodge here and just show them the ring? No, not at all. There's definitely procedures that they'd have to verify. Excuse me.
Do you feel that you get more respect from other members of your the lodge if you do have the ring compared to the members who don't?
Yes, absolutely. Not necessarily even just because I have the ring. It also ties into the organization is predominantly older. At this point, it's a very weird generational gap. You have a lot of men who were World War II vets and Korea vets, and even now some of our Vietnam vets are getting older. That's primarily the body, and then there's a huge gap between people who are now in their 40s and 30s, born in the 80s and 70s. And for some reason, there is a pickup along our age group, people born in the mid 90s. Oddly enough, there's a lot of young men who are like my age or maybe a couple of years older. And even though the organization realizes that, for lack of a better term, it's dying, they need more members because the members are reaching a point. They're slow to change. And the fact that there's a lot of young men with new ideas, and eventually we are going to be the ones in position of power to control the fraternity, it does scare some people. So tying this all in, what I'm trying to say is that respecting the ritual and being quote unquote orthodox in the fraternity as a young person is paramount to respect.
Okay.
That's how you win people over. And wearing the ring is part of that. Really respecting the traditions is part of that, because a lot of them are very adverse to me even being there, let alone I've already proven myself. There's still apprehension about me being a young person, especially because I earned this when I was 18. I'm 24 now, and the wall is not as big of a problem as it was before. But when I first earned my ring, yes, even in my mother lodge, there were apprehensions against me being there. It was a little awkward. I was the youngest master mason in my lodge's history. I still am, and it's very odd. It doesn't matter. Even if a guy comes in today, but he's 19 and gets all of those things, I still am the only one that on my 18th birthday, I began this and finished it before, and no one else has done that. I mean, at least at my lodge.
So the ring's also a sense of pride.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, especially with my home lodge, it's definitely recognized who I am.
Okay.
And so it definitely ties into the whole symbolism of it.
Okay. Well, that's pretty much it. Would you like to say any other comments about the ring? Or I think we pretty much covered everything.
We covered everything. The only thing I would like to say is I think that it's very important, at least personally, for people our age to be involved in things that are bigger than themselves. I think there's a lot of emphasis on kind of individuality that doesn't really go anywhere. Everyone's kind of the same individual. And sometimes it's good to be part of a group. It doesn't really matter necessarily what you believe in, just kind of be some bigger than yourself. It helps the soul a little bit.
So when you wear the ring, you feel like you're part of a larger group.
Yeah.
You feel less isolated.
It's a very interesting combination. I feel a lot of my individuality and personality, what I've personally done, is highlighted while kind of blending into a larger whole.
Okay.
It's a very kind of interesting combination.
Okay. Well, thank you, David. I appreciate it.